Uh, Good morning, everybody, and look forward to being with you and sharing with you some of my experiences around recovery, and um, hopefully I can share something that might be important to you to maybe look at something differently. It's okay to run our lives on how what we believe at the moment, but a disruption is always helpful. And the way I can be disrupted is a sense that I have an open mind. So I don't come here with any authority. I don't come here with any certainty. I'm a work in progress. And I like that idea because I'm always willing to learn new ideas and new strategies to help me become more effective. So I want to start off by just saying that I've been sober 52 years. So I spent my whole adult life in Alcoholics Anonymous, and over those many years, I transitioned to different things and different positions. And I found that I am never static. In other words, I would take a position on something only to find out a few years later I take a different position, often in opposition to what I originally thought. And this is good for me. I think it's good for us because it describes a kind of growing, an understanding of our perceptions and what works. I like I like to think of it as what works rather than is this good or bad. So what I mean by that is, can I get along and have deep, intimate relationships with another human being? Does that work or does it not work? And can I be effective in my work that I do, or am I just showing up just to do the minimum amount? Am I showing up in AA in which I can not only participate but learn as well as offer? So that is a dynamic set of circumstances that I probably keeps me coming here because I feel enlivened by the conversation and with the people in AA. So let me just start by saying, I can't remember when I started drinking. Probably about 16 or somewhere around there. And I came from an alcoholic home, and we could have a conversation about modeling in the household, but all that's fine and dandy. But I can remember making a contract to myself that I would never turn out to be like my father, because his drinking behavior so disturbed me that I just saw that as something I wanted to avoid. Now, here's the mystery of all of this. In spite of that conclusion, I went ahead and became worse than my father in many, many ways. And I look back on that, and it's almost like a form of insanity, isn't it? That I knew better, but somehow or another I was captured and held slave to this alcohol. What I didn't know then, but I can certainly look back and know now, is I was looking to solve something in myself externally. And I think Dr. Silkworth, in the doctor's opinion, said it so clearly. We, meaning alcoholics, are restless, irritable, and discontent, and often seek comfort in ease. See, that's my story. My story is, I was never comfortable around people, around situations, and I was having this internal debate all the time. I'm not good enough, not smart enough, not handsome enough, and so on, which created unease. So instead of working through that, like most of my friends did, through character building, through looking for different ways of different outlets to help solve that, I I don't know if I really chose alcohol, but that's what I went to because I felt the comfort and ease that all of that can be forgotten about. And of course, with drinking alcoholically, the tolerance level increases. So I needed to drink more and more and more to get the same results. And unfortunately, as you all know, that at some point the alcohol turned against me. In other words, I wasn't getting back to that place of comfort and ease. I was getting into paranoia and isolation and retreating into myself and not showing up to work and all kinds of irresponsible behaviors. So one day, thank you, God, for this. One day I reached out to Alcoholics Anonymous. And in spite that, so many years later, I can still recall vividly my first impressions. And my first impressions was, first of all, there's hope here. I didn't know how the people were doing it. I've never been in a room of adults in my life that were sober, that were all sober. And seemed to be having fun. They're laughing, handshakes, welcoming. And frankly, that dynamic I could never remember experiencing. Somehow or another, I attached myself with people like me drinking the way I drank. So this is fresh for me. Then I began to listen to a speaker, and I'll tell you what, I want to briefly talk about this for a moment. The speaker was a man who was really quite funny, and he was from down east in Canada, and he had really a raw sense of humor, and he was able to laugh at himself in front of the room. I was so impressed with this guy that I thought, wow, he had been much worse than I was at that moment, and yet he could stand there and share with other people his insanity, his ridiculousness around alcohol. And I left impressed. Now, every time I met that man, all these years later until his death, and if I was speaking in the room, I would point to him and I said, this man saved my life. And he'd have that big smile on his face, and he just loved hearing that. And I loved delivering it because it was true. He was modeling for me something that I had no idea what it was. And yet I was attracted to it. So I did what people suggested in AA to do, and I was successful in staying sober day at a time, and until one day I knew 5 months in, I knew that they were going to ask me to do something in front of the room. And I was so introverted. I being embarrassed in high school because I didn't do my homework. This reminded me that, I don't want to get up there and read the 12 steps or certainly chair a meeting or never speaking. And that fear sent me out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the reason I mention that is because nothing should be able to send any of us out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. If we have the fear that it's okay to say no thank you, or it's okay to say I'll struggle and try, or you could say not this week or this month. Nothing should prevent us from leaving the rooms, particularly fear. And yet, what I didn't know then, and I certainly learned for most of my life, I was full of fear. I had the worst kind of fear, actually. It was the fear that I didn't even know I had, because I lived in that cesspool for most of my life. So I come to Alcoholics Anonymous the second time with another commitment I made that no matter what's asked of me, I'm going to say yes to it. Now, obviously, I didn't fulfill that 100%, but my no's were legitimate no's. They weren't something based on an emotion. So here I am. I didn't plan to stay. All these many years later, here I am. Now, I come to Alcoholics Anonymous for one reason, and that's to quit drinking. That's what I wanted to get rid of, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to get rid of it. But when I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, something was occurring to me. There's this idea that I could live a whole life. And I started looking at these steps, and I started wondering, okay, I'm just going to jump to the second step. Come to believe. And I wished I had the wisdom back then that I have now. But I'll tell you, when I say come to believe, I understood it unconsciously as come to know. So I went into this intellectual journey that I was on because I thought I had to know God and so on. I completely misrepresented this idea of belief. You see, belief is something that I do without knowing. Knowing is not a factor. So, if, for instance, we all believe that the sun is going to get up tomorrow morning, and tonight it's going to set in the west, and we believe that to be true because we've been given evidence of it. So we learn to believe, and this had a big impact on me once I realized that I wanted to drop this idea of knowing something versus believing something. So I came to believe, which implies a journey, by the way. It implies a journey. It just came to believe. And I had to be satisfied with this journey from step one, from base one, that I am on this spiritual journey. And what come out of that was this idea of being restored. Now, can you imagine our lives being restored? Restored to what? Well, the SEP says sanity. I like to think of it as wholeness. And what I further like to think of it is the sacred identity in which all of us carry. We are sacred people. We are spiritual people. And the variance of my alcoholism only grew in the feeling of upset and anxiety and stress because I wasn't following my sacred identity. See, I can't get away from that. And I like to think of that as the hounds of heaven pounding on me unconsciously. That, you know what? Straighten out here. Be restored. Be whole. Because I had no idea how to do that. I only knew what I knew. I only knew how to survive. I only knew how to fight. I only knew how to win. And you can imagine this young man with that kind of bubbling kinds of things inside, how restless and irritable and discontent I actually am. So to me, this is significant. Now, when I look at those three words, restlessness, irritable, and discontent, I had to learn something about those words. You know, I didn't know when I was restless. I was justifiably discontent. In other words, I was able to blame circumstances and people around me, and therefore I was justified to feel what I was feeling and doing or not doing what I was doing. See, I had to learn that restlessness, irritability, discontent has to do with control. I was trying to control with expectations I have about circumstances which I have no control over, and about people that I was with that I had no control over. And I was trying to align myself or get them to align with me and my priorities. And of course, what happens is nothing but arguments, separations, and destruction, if you like. I just didn't know how to think about resolution, forgiveness, love. Things that my heart was screaming for, but I didn't know I was even screaming for it. You see, there's a whole series of things that started to change in my life as I went to meetings, as I participated in the 12-step program, as I shared with my sponsors, sharing back with me, that I was starting to uncover some very significant, transformative ways of being. So here I am, step two, I came to believe, which is an ongoing journey, which helps me see things in a different way. That I could be restored to sanity. And being restored means going back to the original state of what I was, long before my alcoholism. That I was born into the world with qualities and potential. that I had this beautiful identity that was gifted to me as it is gifted to you. But I had lost sight of it. I have put a veil in between myself and that sacred identity through being so self-determined. So I had to learn to let go. Now, this isn't new news for anybody that's been around the rooms. But what I discovered as my journey continued, that I had to separate what I knew and what I was experiencing. This is a big deal for me. Because oftentimes I would tell you what I know. I've forgotten what I'm experiencing. So what I'm saying to you, even though I know to let go of things, in my experience, I was hanging on to things. And I was talking over the experience, hoping that the experience would change. And that's not the way I found it to work. I had to change the experience. That's what's important, not what I know. Now, it's great to have a need to know. I mean, I've been that kind of person most of my life. I wanted to know things. I wanted to expand my capability. I wanted to become more effective in life. So I took that knowledge was everything. Now, in the big book on page 23, it talks about this idea that the alcoholic's main problem centers in his brain. Now, that's the pronoun. So it centers in our brain. The main problem centers in our brain. So my thinking process wasn't logical or reason. It was invaded by emotion, fears, like misunderstanding, judgments. It was clouded with all of that in there. I had to start to come to believe that this process, this thinking process, would need to be changed. So how do I do that? Well, I took a journey on self-improvement, a lot of years. And yes, I did improve, but not to a point where a spiritual transformation would have done. See, I was still self-determined. We call that self-centeredness. That my ego was dictating what I was to believe, was not to believe, what I was going to do, was not going to do. I had no other access other than my ego. So in step 3, it asked me to make a decision. You see, what's a decision? Well, today this word is watered down. I could decide to go to a restaurant this afternoon, but change my mind in the meeting. That's not a decision. What a decision, the root word of this word, to decide, has the idea in Latin to cut off or kill off any other options. So what does that mean? Well, let's look at the other side verbs that are being used. Pesticide, homicide, suicide, genocide. It means to kill off any other options. I didn't have the character to understand at that moment what it would take to make a decision. Because I used the word flippantly. But then I started investigating this idea. What does it mean for me? And it's not that I will never take my will back kind of idea. I've taken it back often. But when I come to recognize it, I go back to the decision I made to turn my life and my will over to the care of God. So if something occurs to me, a reversal, financial reversal, or a marriage that's defaulted, or friendships that disintegrated, I leave it in the hands of God. And I seek guidance. I'm no longer defending it or debating it or ruminating over it, because I made a decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God. Can you just imagine the kind of relief I got when I started doing this as a regular practice? It is so beautiful not to hang on to all the stuff that I hang on to that made me restless, irritable, and discontent. This is new territory for me. And I know it's challenging because it's challenging for me to keep this idea in front of me because I could go back at any moment to the old John, the old immature, emotional John that seeks revenge or threats or need to be right. But now, today, when I can see it coming. And I can take a pause. This is a pause that we talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous. I can say, I know who you are, to the illogical, emotional kinds of reactions. I know who you are. And I acknowledge that you're with me. So I embrace it rather than trying to force it away. I embrace it and I smile at it, and I'm going to ask to sit over there because you're not the king of my sacred identity anymore. And I'm able to, instead of being threatened by something, I can seek to understand. And I love the words, phrases I use often. And when someone says something to me, whether it's an AA room or whether it's in business or whether it's, friendships, if they say something that I don't like, that I'm triggered, I use the same question all the time as a pause. I say this, tell me more about that. That's telling me to keep an open mind, reminding me to keep an open mind. It sharpens my listening, and people get to share their experience rather than me making a judgment on it. See, this is the essence of learning, is the open-mindedness and the humility to listen, not to be talking. So these are all things that are shaping my life way back then. It just started changing. I saw the world very differently. I didn't see it as something I'm against, as something I could work with. I didn't see people to avoid. I saw people to connect. These are massive changes in this young man's life. Massive changes. Things I feared kind of drifted away. Sure, the experience of fear really never goes away. But again, I can manage it. I can pause and I can say, oh, fear, I know who you are. Welcome. You're familiar to me. But right now, I'm not going to allow you to make a decision for me. I'm going to use an intuitive choice, a heart space of how I can react. Now, here we are. First 3 steps have changed my life so dramatically. And of course, I don't want you to think that I'm leaving the impression that I operate perfectly. It is vigilance. It is the willingness to see my experience and being honest enough with myself to recognize it and have some tools in my quiver that I can pull out other than the default patterns that I use to survive. Now, friends, this cannot be done on my own. I've tried. So when we talk about step 3 in terms of will, turning our will over to the care of God, what does will mean? We use the word so often. Oh, I'm willing to do this. I'm not sure I have the will, self-will. We speak like this. But what is the will? You can't go and buy it. It's not on the store shelves. What is it? Well, I've come to this definition, which I really like. It means to cause. To cause. So when I'm willing to do something, I'm trying to cause it. Now, we know that our self-will is like a muscle. It tires over short periods of time. So for instance, Sunday morning, I'm going to go on a diet Monday morning and vow never to eat a cookie again. And by 2:00 in the afternoon, I got one stuffed in my mouth. Why? Because I'm trying to do it on my own. Now, take that cause and take it to the first cause of the universe. I'm giving God permission to be my first cause. I'm going to believe that I have a power so great that it will help me move me through life. That all of a sudden the pressure of me trying to cause something is gone. I am being caused by something greater than myself. Now, this is what I'd like to use the metaphor for you. I imagine the wind. Can I see the wind? No, I can't. I can see the results of the wind, the leaves on the tree. I can't see the wind. I can feel the wind. I don't know where the wind started, and I don't know where it ended. I have no capacity to learn that. It's a phenomenon. See, God is my wind. And my choice is I can walk into the wind, which is hardship. That's taking my will and trying to supplant God's will. So walking in the wind is hard and difficult, which I've experienced many times in my life. Or I could have the wind at my back that provides this motivation, this capacity to succeed where before I used to fail. Now, any logical person, I think, would come to the conclusion this is worth believing in, even if it's not true. I can't prove to you that it's true. I haven't got facts. But what I have is a belief that something that's providing me the kind of grace to move me forward in life that will help and assist me to get the result that I'm going to be getting. And I've made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. And I believe that I'm being restored. You see, very little to do with me. Now, we move into the inventory step. Why do the inventory step? Well, because we have to have some self-knowledge. We have to look at ourselves, not in I believe not in a good or bad way. I don't believe in that anymore. I used to. Well, fear is bad. Bravery is good. No, I don't believe that. I like to use the word, does it work for me? So if I have an argument with a friend of mine, it's in my inventory, there's something that didn't work. And I needed to look at it in a way, depersonalize it, first of all. I don't use I am anymore. I say I have. I have been angry, not I'm angry, because that will interfere with my sacred identity. It's like putting weeds in a garden. I have a gate and a fence around my sacred identity. So the idea of self-identification, I am, is very sacred to me. But I do, and it's kind of I don't know if you've heard this expression, be, do, have. Be, do, have. So that I don't have to have anything to be something. I don't have to do anything to be something. Being is first. See, I'm being something, and as I'm being something, as I've gotten to know myself and being able to assess myself in terms of character, I then can be, I can do something and have something as a result of that. See, this to me makes more sense than thinking, well, I'm bad or I'm weak or I'm undisciplined. No, that isn't helpful. It just isn't helpful. We're putting labels on ourselves that probably are not accurate, are from old narratives that we had since childhood, and we're compounding it by reliving it again and again and again. You see, Alcoholics Anonymous is about breaking out. It's about liberation. It's about transformation. It is about putting the past and let the past bury its dead. That I'm no longer the boy at 23 years old coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. I am a man who has spent his adult life attempting to have a spiritual journey. Now, I don't know how much time I have left, but I want to close this by saying, now, Restlessness. What's the antidote to restlessness? It's stillness. Our 11th step, I'm sorry to jump way ahead of there, but our 11th step asks us to be still. And in Psalms, it talks about be still and know that I am God. So there's a connection, there's an encounter there. There's the idea of surrendering the ego and being taught by an experience of this greater power than myself. And as I become still, the restlessness subsides. Discontent is something that I wished I was rather than who I am. And when you're in meditation, what happens is you learn to accept yourself as you are and as you're not. So the discontent is removed. Irritable? No, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the moments I have. I'm looking forward to all the moments I'm going to have today, interacting with people, doing what I'm doing, and enjoying every moment. You see, the restlessness, irritable, and discontent has been appeased by the spiritual resting in the stillness of God's language. Now, lastly, if I could, lastly, I want to talk about prayer for a moment. There's a difference between saying a prayer, or reading a prayer, or experiencing a prayer. You see, I can get so automatic. I can repeat the prayers, but I'm not experiencing the prayer. So I played around with this for some time. So I've taken the Serenity Prayer and I changed the words. Oh, dare I? Yeah, I have. And I said, God grant me the serenity. I say now, thank you for the serenity that you've given me. Thank you. I'm no longer seeking something out there that has a destination. What I'm saying is I've been gifted with the serenity. Now it's up to me to activate it. To accept the things I cannot change. Thank you for the ability and the knowledge for me to look at my life and see it for what it is. I call it what it is game. I've accepted myself for who I am and who I am not. And that goes on to the courage. Thank you for the courage that you've given me to be able to deal with the things that I need to deal with today. You see, these are moments in our lives that are so important that we can be changed in an instant. You don't have to wait 52 years to have this experience of liberation. You can have it today, right now, by simply stopping, being still. Now, I know a lot of people. I belong to a meditation group. I started the meditation group, by the way. I can't do that. I'm not a very good meditator. Well, guess what? You're not a very good meditator because you have a certain expectation. Each of us can benefit from being still, being quiet, being open, surrendering, allowing. These are words I had no meaning in my life, but they mean so much to me today. To be able to get into my heart space, Wilson calls this intuitiveness. To be able to experience the wisdom of generations within myself. It's there. All I need to do is allow it to come forth. So I can live my life, not perfectly. That's the other side we have to look for. We're all or nothing people and expect perfection. Now, this is the other key thing. We know we're not perfect. Intellectually, we know we're not perfect, but we experience perfection. I can say I'm disappointed in myself. Why do I keep doing that? As if to say that I could automatically done something else, rather than saying, oh, I recognize that now. Thank you for that. And what I could have done or said is this. Thank you. I'm kind and gentle with myself because that's what gets me further along spiritually. I don't know if I'm out of time, Andy, or not. I kind of.
You still got a couple of minutes, John, if you want to.
Oh, okay.
But there's
Oh,
some people who rather hear you for another hour too. But
oh.
at least.
Okay.
But yeah, a couple of minutes. Sure.
All right. So if you're new or if you've been around a while, if you're going to meetings for the sake of going to meetings and you're kind of just, I don't know, running on automatic, take a good look today to see what you can deliver to another person. Maybe a smile, maybe the mention of their name, maybe a phone call, maybe a lunch or a cup of coffee. Be there, the agent for change for them. This is when all of this stuff starts to materialize, not from what we know, but when we're prepared to do something with it. See, we have the be, do, have. I'm being restored to my sacred identity. And therefore, I can reach somebody by talking to them about recovery. You see, our drinking stories is all about the past. And yes, we want to share it for identification, but we don't live in the drunken story. We don't live in our problems. We live in solutions. That's what the 12 steps are. They're solutions. I need to make sure that I am mentally fit to live in the solutions as is being delivered to me. So God bless everybody. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Andy, for inviting me.